The coffee hit before anyone could blink. Hot liquid splattered across Naomi Carter's white blouse, cutting through the hum of small talk and silverware. The sound came next, a sharp gasp, then silence so tight it hurt to breathe. Naomi stood still, cup shards at her feet, steam curling up from the spill. She didn't move, didn't speak. Across from her, Victoria Langford, tall, flawless, practiced in cruelty, smiled like she'd just done the world a favor. "Oh my," Victoria said, voice smooth as glass. "You should really be more careful. People like you tend to make a mess in the wrong places." A few guests chuckled, quiet, nervous, the kind of laughter people use to stay on the winning side of a room. Naomi reached for a napkin, her hands steady. The hot coffee had already seeped through the fabric, burning against her skin, but she kept her face blank. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said. "I'll clean it right away. Don't bother." Victoria interrupted loud enough for others to hear. "They pay people to do that, don't they?" Laughter again, more confident this time. Someone whispered, "God, the help these days." Naomi said nothing. She bent down, picked up the pieces of the porcelain cup, and carried them to the service tray by the wall. Her shoes clicked softly on the marble floor, the sound of quiet dignity in a room that didn't deserve it. No one offered a hand, no one apologized. She felt the weight of their stares, not pity, not empathy, just curiosity. The kind people reserve for small disasters that don't touch them. And across the room, under the golden chandelier, one man had seen everything. Daniel Carter, CEO of Langford Industries, and Naomi's husband. He watched the coffee run down her sleeve, watched Victoria's triumphant smile, and for the first time that evening, his hands clenched at his sides. No one in that hall knew who Naomi really was. His partner, his equal, the woman who built the company's ethics division from scratch before stepping down to keep their marriage private. Now she stood there like a stranger among people who called themselves his peers. The orchestra resumed playing. Waiters moved like nothing had happened. Conversations picked up again, louder than before, trying to drown out the discomfort. Naomi found a quiet corner, wiped her sleeve with a napkin, and forced a breath through her lungs. The smell of roasted beans and perfume lingered thick and artificial. She had endured worse. She reminded herself of that her first year in law school. The whispers about diversity quotas, the boardroom stares when she spoke too confidently. Still something about tonight, the ease of the insult, the audience's silence carved deep. She caught her reflection in the mirrored column beside her. Calm face, eyes steady. The only thing betraying her was the stain that spread like a wound over her blouse. For those who've ever been humiliated in a room where everyone pretends it didn't happen, you know, that kind of silence. The one that makes you doubt your own reality. If you've been there, you'll understand what Naomi felt. Not rage, not fear, but a cold, quiet promise that she would remember every detail. When the event ended, Naomi left before anyone could stop her. Outside, the night air bit at her skin. A car door opened behind her. "Naomi," Daniel's voice. Calm, restrained. Too calm. She didn't turn. "I didn't want them to know," she said softly. "You asked me to keep things separate." "I know." His voice cracked just slightly, but watching that, I almost forgot the promise. Naomi exhaled slow and measured. "Let it go," she said. "People like her don't need anger. They need consequences." Daniel looked at her, the woman the world saw as an assistant and the woman he knew as his equal. "Then we'll make sure they learn the difference," he said. The car door shut. Inside, Naomi stared at the city lights flickering through the glass, calm, silent, deliberate. Somewhere between humiliation and resolve, she felt something shift. Tonight wasn't over, it was just recorded. The next morning, the headlines were still polite. Langford Industries hosts elegant gala to celebrate diversity and innovation. Not a word about the scene, no photo, no whisper of spilled coffee or the woman who'd thrown it. But inside the building, everyone knew. They just didn't talk about it. Naomi arrived early the way she always did. The lobby smelled of expensive cologne and ambition. Marble floors gleamed, conversations hushed when she walked by. Not because she was important not to them, but because people always quiet down around discomfort they helped create. She rode the elevator alone. The glass walls reflected the city outside, clean and bright, as if nothing ugly had ever touched it. When the doors opened, the marketing team was already gathered near the reception. Their voices dropped the second she stepped out. "Morning," Naomi said simply. "Morning," one replied, fake smile tight. Victoria Langford's laughter drifted down the hall. She was already there, radiant, untouchable, surrounded by executives who wanted her favor more than they feared her cruelty. Naomi passed them on her way to the assistant's cubicle, the one she'd insisted on keeping when she started consulting again. "Oh," Victoria's voice rang out. "You made it in? I was worried I'd scared you off after last night." The women around her laughed. Naomi stopped just long enough to look up. "I don't scare easily," she said. Her tone wasn't sharp. It was calm, precise, the kind that unsettled people used to being obeyed. Victoria blinked, smile freezing for a half-second before returning. "Of course not. You're used to tougher rooms, I'm sure." Naomi said nothing. She sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and began typing. The noise of the keyboard was the only sound that didn't pretend to be polite. Across the building in his top-floor office, Daniel Carter watched the security feed. He wasn't supposed to, but he did. Naomi had kept her word. She hadn't told anyone who she was. To them, she was just another mid-level employee, overqualified, efficient, invisible. He remembered the look on Victoria's face the night before, not regret, not surprise, but satisfaction. The kind that only comes from long practice. People like her didn't need anger. They needed exposure. Daniel turned off the monitor and called his assistant. "I want a full review of last night's event," he said. "Guest list, table assignments, everything." "Of course, sir," she replied. He stared out at the skyline. "And send me the footage from Ballroom Camera 3. At lunch, Naomi sat alone in the corner cafe across the street. The barista knew her order by now, black coffee, no sugar. She liked the taste unsoftened. The door chimed and someone slid into the seat across from her. Daniel. No tie today, no briefcase, just exhaustion. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "We can't keep pretending," he replied. "We have to," Naomi whispered. If anyone finds out what he interrupted, that the woman my investors laughed at is my wife, that the person they called the help built half the systems they use to stay compliant." She looked down at her cup. "They won't forgive it," she said. "Not you, not me. Then maybe it's time they stop being the ones who get to forgive." She didn't answer. The air between them tightened, not anger, not fear, just the weight of years spent playing roles neither of them believed in anymore. Daniel reached into his jacket and slid something across the table, a small black flash drive. "The footage," he said. "From last night," he nodded. "Everything." Naomi didn't touch it. "What do you expect me to do with this? Whatever you think is right." He dropped some bills on the table and walked out without another word. Back at her desk, Naomi stared at the flash drive in her hand. She could feel the eyes around her colleagues, whispering, speculating. They thought she didn't notice, but she always did. That evening, she plugged it into her laptop. The screen flickered, then played the footage. Coffee midair. Laughter. Her own face calm and silent. Victoria's smirk. The camera caught everything, even Daniel's reflection at the edge of the frame. Naomi watched once, then again, then once more slower this time. She copied it, encrypted it, and saved it. She didn't know what she'd do with it yet, but she knew she wouldn't destroy it. Justice was never loud. It was patient. The next morning, she arrived to find a memo pinned to the breakroom board. Global Ethics Summit. Internal contributors needed. Apply by Friday. Victoria's name was already on the list of hosts. Naomi smiled for the first time in days. She picked up a pen, signed her name directly under Victoria's neat, steady handwriting, and walked away without saying a word. For those who've ever been pushed down and told to stay quiet, you'll understand what she felt then. Not revenge, not triumph, just the calm certainty that every mask eventually slips, especially the expensive ones. And somewhere behind every mask, there's always someone watching who knows exactly who you are. The Global Ethics Summit was meant to impress. Banners with phrases like "integrity in business and diversity builds strength" hung over the entrance hall. Cameras flashed. Waiters floated through the crowd, carrying champagne that no one really drank. Naomi stood near the back, her badge clipped to her jacket. Naomi Carter, executive assistant. She looked like she belonged there, but not in the way they assumed. People saw her and saw service, efficiency, silence. They didn't see the calm precision behind her gaze or the small black flash drive in her purse that held every second of Victoria Langford's humiliation in disguise. Victoria arrived late, draped in a white designer coat that screamed wealth and innocence. She basked in the light of every camera. Reporters turned toward her as though cruelty could be washed clean by luxury and perfume. "Darling," she said loudly to one of the hosts, "isn't this decor exquisite?" Almost distracts from how terribly woke everything's become lately. Laughter, sharp and approving. Naomi felt it slice through her chest like cold glass. She didn't move, didn't blink, not yet. From the mezzanine above, Daniel Carter watched the crowd below. He was there officially as the company's CEO, not as Naomi's husband. To the world, they were separate. To him, the line had already dissolved. His team had begged him not to come in person. "It's better if you stay neutral," they'd said. "Don't get involved in the minor HR incident from the gala." Minor incident. He remembered the look on Naomi's face that night, dignity holding itself together under humiliation, and felt his jaw tighten. The first session began. Victoria took the stage with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged. She spoke about ethical leadership and building inclusive workplaces. Each word dripped with irony so thick it almost echoed. Naomi sat in the third row, still and silent, a faint smile playing at the corner of her mouth. She knew what was coming. Not because she'd planned it not fully, but because life has a way of giving cruel people the rope they insist on using. When the Q&A opened, Naomi stood. Her voice was calm, measured, professional. "Mrs. Langford," she began, "you mentioned that inclusion requires accountability. Could you share an example of how you've personally held yourself accountable after misjudging someone in a professional setting?" The room went still. Victoria blinked. For a fraction of a second, something in her expression cracked. Then she laughed, a brittle, rehearsed sound. "My dear, I don't usually find myself in such circumstances." Naomi nodded. "That's unfortunate," she said, "because the footage from last month's gala might disagree." The word footage landed like a dropped glass. Cameras turned, heads snapped. Even Daniel above stopped breathing for a moment. "Excuse me," Victoria said, her voice suddenly sharp. "The ballroom," Naomi continued. "The diversity event. You remember? You threw coffee at a staff member, me." Murmurs, confused, growing louder, the sound of denial forming in every corner of the room. "This is absurd," Victoria snapped. "Security already here?" Daniel's voice came from the upper level. He was descending the staircase now, every eye turning to him. His tone was calm, clipped, the way CEOs speak when they're about to end someone's career. "Mrs. Langford," he said evenly, "perhaps it would be best if everyone saw the footage and decided for themselves." The screen behind the stage flickered to life, and then it played. The coffee, the laughter, Naomi's calm face, Victoria's words. "People like you don't belong here." No narration, no edits, just truth. When it ended, the silence was worse than noise. Naomi didn't look away. Daniel didn't either. Victoria, pale, now tried to recover. "This is completely out of context." "There's no context," Daniel interrupted. "Just a choice you made." The moderators froze, unsure whether to intervene. The audience shifted in their seats. Phones recorded silently. Naomi stepped back, not triumphant, just steady. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't needed to. Her calmness was louder than any humiliation could be. After the session, the crowd dispersed with murmurs and forced smiles. No one made eye contact with Victoria. No one offered her a word of support. Naomi walked to the lobby, the weight of months of silence slowly lifting. Daniel caught up with her. "You didn't tell me you were going to do that," he said quietly. "I didn't plan it," she replied. She did. He looked at her, admiration mixed with something heavier. "You know this will make noise," he said. "Good," she answered. "Some walls need to shake before they fall." That night the video spread. Not from Naomi, she never shared it. Someone in the audience had recorded the entire exchange. By morning it was everywhere. Hashtags, headlines, comment sections filled with outraged defense analysis. The internet dissected every second of Victoria Langford's smirk, every ounce of Naomi's restraint. By noon, Victoria's PR team released a statement. "An unfortunate misunderstanding," it said. By evening, the board released another Langford Industries condemns all forms of discrimination, and just beneath that, a signature Daniel Carter, CEO. The next day, Naomi walked into work like she always did. Calm, composed. Only this time, the silence that followed her wasn't mocking. It was respect. Uneasy, reluctant, but real. Her name wasn't on her cubicle anymore. Her badge read something new: Naomi Carter, Director of Ethics and Inclusion. No announcement, no speech. Just quiet acknowledgement that sometimes justice doesn't roar. It moves like a shadow, steady, deliberate, impossible to ignore once it arrives. The morning after the summit, silence had a different weight. The company's headquarters felt less like a workplace and more like a courtroom. Every whisper, every look carried judgment. Naomi's inbox filled overnight not with apologies but with invitations. News outlets wanted interviews. Nonprofits offered speaking engagements. She ignored them all. She wasn't interested in becoming a symbol. She just wanted the system that enabled people like Victoria to be forced finally to look at themselves. Victoria Langford didn't show up that morning. By 10:00 a.m., HR had announced her temporary leave. By noon, the story had reached every major news network. Clips of the video played on repeat: the thrown coffee, the laughter, Daniel's calm, cutting line. There's no context, just a choice you made. The internet had already decided. Some called it karma, others called it a scandal. For Naomi, it was just noise. She kept her head down and went back to work. Same desk, same computer, same quiet focus. Except now, people walked around her carefully as if she carried fire. That afternoon, Daniel asked her to step into his office. The blinds were half-drawn sunlight slicing through like judgment. He didn't start with small talk. "The board's meeting tonight," he said. "They'll want a formal statement from both of us." Naomi shook her head. "No, from you maybe, not from me. They'll want to control the narrative." "Then let them try," she said. "But I won't lend them my name so they can polish their conscience." Daniel exhaled. He wasn't angry, he understood. He'd built that same machine she was now dismantling. "You're trending, Naomi. You know that I didn't ask to be." "No," he said quietly. "But people rarely ask for revolutions either." She looked at him then, not as her CEO or her husband, but as a man who'd spent decades in rooms that rewarded silence. "If this costs you your position?" "Then it's overdue," he interrupted. "Maybe it's time someone else ran the company I no longer recognize." The words settled between them, heavy, inevitable. By evening, the building was surrounded by cameras. Reporters camped outside the main gate. Employees slipped out through side doors to avoid questions. Inside the boardroom, tension pulsed like static. Daniel faced 12 people, investors, partners, the same ones who had once toasted Victoria's name at galas and golf clubs. "This incident," one of them said, "has damaged our image." "No," Daniel replied evenly. "This incident revealed it." "You can't possibly keep her on payroll," another added. "The optics." "Optics," Daniel cut in, "are why this happened in the first place." A silence followed. No one wanted to be quoted agreeing or disagreeing. "Mrs. Langford will issue a public apology," someone finally said. "We'll move on." "She already did," Daniel said. And no one believed her. He closed the folder in front of him, stood and looked around the table. "If we're serious about ethics, then it can't stop at memos and slogans. We don't just fire one person, we fix the culture that protects them. And if we don't, then I resign," he said simply. That was the line that made it to the news later. "Then I resign." But what the cameras never saw was Naomi standing alone in her apartment watching the press conference unfold live. Daniel didn't name her. He didn't need to. He spoke of dignity, of integrity, of the quiet power of people who still chose to show up to work even after being humiliated in public. When he finished, the reporters shouted questions. "Will Mrs. Carter return to the company? Are you stepping down?" He didn't answer. He just walked off stage. That night, Naomi found him on the balcony, sleeves rolled up, tie discarded. The city lights blinked far below. "You didn't have to defend me," she said softly. "I didn't," he replied. "I defended the truth." For the first time in weeks, she smiled, faint, tired, but real. "You realize what comes next, don't you? Rebuilding," he said. "From the ashes if we have to. And Victoria already handled." He nodded toward his phone screen, glowing with an unread message from HR termination complete. Outside, the world was still deciding how to spin the story victim-hero scandal love affair. Naomi ignored it all. She opened her laptop, typed for a long time, then paused. The cursor blinked at the end of a sentence. Power doesn't corrupt. Silence does. She saved the file, and for the first time since the coffee hit her skin, Naomi allowed herself to breathe. The humiliation had burned. But sometimes fire clears the ground for something better to grow. By Friday morning, the city had a new obsession. Every news station, blog, and gossip feed carried some version of the same headline Socialite fired after racial incident at Langford Industries. CEO's secret marriage revealed. The last part hit like a spark in dry grass. Someone on the inside had leaked it. Naomi didn't know who, and she didn't care to. Within hours, every camera in Boston wanted her face. Every headline wanted her reaction. The black assistant who married the CEO. They said it like a scandal. They said it like love was something that needed permission. Naomi didn't leave her apartment for 2 days. Calls poured in from journalists, friends, and strangers who thought they knew her story now that they'd read 3 paragraphs of it online. Daniel came home late that Sunday, exhausted, still in his suit. "They'll calm down soon," he said, setting his briefcase down. "They won't," Naomi replied. "Because this isn't about gossip. It's about power." He looked at her, the same calm, unflinching tone he'd first fallen in love with years ago. "And how do we take it back?" he asked. "We don't," she said. "We redefine it." She turned the laptop toward him. On the screen was a proposal Carter Foundation for Workplace Equity. "You wrote this?" he asked quietly. "Started it years ago," Naomi said. "Before we ever thought of marriage. Before I thought the system could ever change from the inside." Daniel read in silence. The plan was bold scholarships, legal defense funds, partnerships with underrepresented founders. It wasn't revenge. It was blueprint. "You realize what this means?" he said. "Yes," Naomi replied. "That we stop asking for seats at their tables and start building our own." Meanwhile, across town, Victoria Langford's world collapsed in slow motion. Her phone lit up non-stop messages from friends, turned critics' invitations, withdrawn contracts canceled. Her name became a cautionary tale. Clubs she'd chaired for decades voted her out in emergency sessions. One headline called her the woman who mistook status for character. By the end of the week, her husband moved out quietly, taking their children with him. The only message he left behind read, "They deserve better than your version of the world." Victoria stared at the note until the letters blurred. For the first time in her life, no one was answering her calls. No one cared what she had to say. She thought about reaching out to Naomi to apologize, to explain, to beg. But deep down, she knew there were things you can't apologize your way out of. There were consequences you had to live with. The following Monday, Daniel stood at the company's quarterly assembly, flanked by executives and board members, who looked as if they'd rather be anywhere else. "Before we start," he said, "there's something I need to say." The room quieted. He looked down once, then back up. "I built this company believing that success excused blindness, that as long as the numbers went up, we could pretend our values did too. I was wrong." The crowd shifted. Some nodded. Others crossed their arms. "Last week's incident wasn't an outlier," he continued. "It was a mirror, and what we saw in it wasn't flattering." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "We'll be restructuring our leadership and our culture from the ground up. Effective immediately. Naomi Carter will serve as Director of Ethics and Inclusion, reporting directly to me." There was a collective inhale, a quiet shock of recognition. The same people who had ignored her a month ago now clapped cautiously, uncertain whether to mean it. Naomi stood near the side entrance, unseen by most listening. Not pride, not satisfaction, just a deep, quiet understanding that this was how real change began, not with applause, but with discomfort. That evening, as they left the office, Daniel stopped beside her in the elevator. "You didn't want this attention," he said. "No," Naomi replied, "but maybe it's what's needed." "You sure you want to carry it?" She met his eyes. "I've been carrying worse for years. At least this time it's mine by choice." They didn't speak for the rest of the ride. The doors opened onto the lobby, and flashes from outside painted the glass in white bursts. Reporters called out questions as they stepped into the night. Naomi kept walking. Daniel stayed a step behind, not leading, not shielding, just beside her where he'd always promised to be. Somewhere far from the cameras, Victoria watched the same footage play on her phone. Naomi's face, calm and poised, filled the screen. She turned the volume down, but the words lingered in her head. "There's no context. just a choice you made. For the first time, Victoria understood what that meant. Not just as humiliation, but as truth. Her downfall wasn't about one mistake. It was about a lifetime of not questioning herself. And as the world she'd built on wealth and cruelty dissolved, she realized something terrifying: Naomi hadn't ruined her. She had simply revealed her. The noise faded slowly. By the third week, the press had moved on to another scandal, another story. But inside Langford Industries, the echo of what happened still lingered in every meeting, every hallway glance, every word that used to come too easily. Naomi arrived early, as usual, carrying her notebook and the same calm poise she'd always had. But now the silence that used to feel like exclusion felt like space to rebuild, space to redefine. Her first day as Director of Ethics and Inclusion didn't start with applause or flowers. It started with paperwork. She sat in a glass-walled conference room reviewing old complaints reports dismissed as misunderstandings. Memos marked resolved, no further action required. The same handwriting signed off on nearly all of them, Victoria Langford. Naomi traced the pen strokes with her eyes, not anger, just understanding. Systems didn't break overnight. They eroded slowly with signatures, approvals, silence. She wrote one line at the top of her notes: "Accountability begins where comfort ends." That would become her first policy. Later that morning, Daniel stopped by. No suit jacket, just rolled sleeves and exhaustion he didn't try to hide. "They've accepted my resignation," he said quietly. Naomi looked up from her notes. "You actually did it." "It's time," he said. "Someone else can run the numbers. I'll work with you on the foundation." She leaned back, studying him. "You're sure?" "Completely," he said. "Besides, they can't fix what they don't understand. But you can." It wasn't flattery. It was conviction. That afternoon, an email came through. Subject: request for meeting. Victoria Langford. Naomi stared at it for a long moment before replying, "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. When Victoria arrived, she was almost unrecognizable. No jewels, no entourage, no carefully curated grace. Just a woman who'd run out of disguises. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. Naomi gestured to the chair across the table. "Sit." The silence stretched. Victoria's hands trembled slightly. "I came to apologize," she said. "Not to the cameras, to you." Naomi said nothing. "I've lost everything," Victoria continued. "Friends, reputation, even the charity board asked me to step down. And I keep thinking," she hesitated, voice cracking. "I keep thinking about that moment. The look on your face. You didn't even fight back." Naomi's tone was soft but unyielding. "Would it have mattered if I did?" Victoria blinked back tears. "Probably not." "Then why are you really here?" Naomi asked. "Because I need to understand how you survived it. The shame." Naomi looked at her, not with pity, not with hatred, but with something harder to earn clarity. "You mistake endurance for peace," she said. "I didn't survive you. I outgrew what made you possible." The words hung heavy. Victoria nodded slowly, as if realizing she'd come for forgiveness, but found something rarer truth. "Can I ever make this right?" she asked finally. "You can't rewrite what's done," Naomi said. "But you can choose what comes next. Most people never get that far." For the first time, Victoria didn't argue. She just nodded, stood up, and left quietly, a different kind of silence following her out. That evening, Daniel joined Naomi at home. The apartment felt lighter now, like air could move again. He handed her a folder. Inside were the foundation's incorporation papers, signed, filed, approved. The Carter Foundation for Workplace Equity. "It's official," he said. Naomi smiled faintly. "Then it begins." "You know," Daniel said, pouring 2 glasses of wine, "when we met, I thought you were the calmest person I'd ever known. And now I know calm isn't quiet. It's strength disguised as stillness." She looked at him for a moment, then said softly, "We'll build something that lasts." "You already did," he replied. "I just finally caught up." A month later, Naomi stood at a lectern inside Harvard's auditorium. The event was small students, professors, young professionals who had followed her story and wanted to hear the real version, not the viral one. Her opening words were simple. "They called me an assistant. And they were right. I assisted in changing everything they thought they understood about power." Laughter, then applause. But when it faded, her tone changed slower, deeper, steadier. "Here's the truth. Justice isn't a moment. It's maintenance. It's showing up every day and refusing to participate in someone else's silence." She paused. "If you take anything from my story, let it be this. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to keep standing where the truth can find you." The room rose to its feet. In the back row, Daniel watched her speak the woman the world once overlooked, now teaching it how to see. That night, as they walked home under the soft glow of city lights, Naomi said quietly, "It's strange. I don't feel victorious." Daniel smiled. "You don't need to. You're free." 6 months later, the headlines had forgotten her name. That was exactly how Naomi Carter wanted it. The world had moved on to new stories, new scandals, new lessons it hadn't yet learned. But inside Langford Industries, the air felt different. Posters once used for empty slogans were replaced with names, real employees, real stories. The annual ethics report no longer read like PR. It read like progress. Naomi walked through the hallways one last time as director before handing over the role to her chosen successor, a young woman named Aisha, who had once told her, "I didn't think people like us could ever lead without permission." Naomi had smiled then. "You don't wait for permission," she said. "You work until silence becomes agreement." Outside the building, a spring wind moved through the city. The morning light bounced off the glass towers, clean, quiet, almost forgiving. Daniel waited by the car hands in his pockets, watching her take in the moment. "You ready?" he asked. "Not really," Naomi said. "But that's the point." He smiled. "You're going to change more out there than you ever could in here." "Maybe," she said. "But this place, it's proof that change can start anywhere." She looked back once more at the building, not with resentment, not pride, just peace. The place that had burned her had also lit the path forward. The Carter Foundation grew faster than either of them expected. Partnerships formed. Grants flowed. Interns filled the small office with the sound of idealism that refused to die. Naomi didn't want a title, she wanted results. She taught the interns what she wished someone had told her years ago. If you ever have to choose between being liked and being truthful, pick truth. You can rebuild from that. You can't rebuild from pretending. Occasionally, an anonymous envelope arrived at the office, letters from people Naomi would never meet. "Your story gave me courage. I stood up for myself at work today. They tried to silence me, and I remembered what you said about standing where truth can find you." Naomi read each one quietly and kept them in a box under her desk. Not as trophies, as reminders that quiet voices could still shake entire rooms. One evening, after a long day of reviewing new projects, she found Daniel in the foundation's kitchen. Sleeves, rolled up washing mugs no one had remembered to clean. "You know," she said, leaning on the doorway, "we could hire someone to do that." "We could," he replied. "But some things are better done by hand." He looked at her with the same steady warmth that had anchored her through the storm. "You ever regret it? The exposure, the chaos, all of it?" Naomi thought for a long time before answering. "No," she said finally. "Because it didn't destroy me. It revealed me." Across the city, Victoria Langford lived quietly in a small townhouse. She volunteered twice a week at a community legal clinic, filing papers, answering phones. She never spoke of who she had been. One afternoon, while organizing folders, she found a note taped inside a cabinet. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. People can change. Systems can, too. But first you have to stop pretending you were ever the exception. There was no signature. She knew whose words they were. Victoria folded the note and kept it in her wallet. Not as guilt as compass. A year later, Naomi stood on a small stage at a scholarship dinner hosted by the Carter Foundation. The room wasn't filled with executives or politicians. It was filled with students, single parents, refugees, janitors, people who knew what it meant to be unseen. Naomi spoke without notes. "A year ago I was called the assistant, like it was a reminder of my place. But maybe being an assistant isn't shameful. Maybe it's sacred, because it means you help, you build, you hold the line until others can walk across." Her voice was calm, steady, almost a whisper. "I used to think dignity was something you had to protect. Now I know it's something you give to yourself and to others." The room was silent when she finished. Not the silence of indifference, but the silence of people absorbing truth. Later that night, she and Daniel walked home through the soft rain. They didn't talk about the past anymore. They didn't need to. The city that had once watched her humiliation now carried her name on foundation plaques and quiet policies that outlived the headlines. You think they'll ever really change? Daniel asked. Maybe not all at once, Naomi said. But one truth at a time, that's how it starts. She slipped her hand into his. Some stories end with applause. Some end with silence. But the best ones, the ones that matter, end with movement. Not the kind that shouts for attention, but the kind that changes direction, quietly, permanently. Naomi Carter never wanted revenge. She wanted restoration. And she got it not by winning louder, but by standing longer. If you've ever been reduced to less than what you are, remember Naomi's story. The world will try to make you smaller, so it can stay comfortable. Don't oblige it. Stand your ground, even in humiliation, even in doubt. Because dignity doesn't need permission, it just needs time. And one day when the noise fades and the lights shift, the truth will still be standing calm, steady, and wearing your name.